folks, and welcome to ArtSpeaks. I am your host, Katie Hazard, and I am Burning Man's Associate Director of Art Management, which means that I'm the head of the art department, which is such an amazing job, and I feel super fortunate that I get to give so much of my energy to something that I love so much. So I am thrilled to be here today and welcome you to ArtSpeaks. If you are new to this event, this is Burning Man Project's Artist Storytelling Series. We just launched it this summer and we've been having a great time with it so far, getting lots of good feedback, and we're loving having this opportunity to showcase these exceptional Burning Man artists. So as folks are signing in, if you could say hello and where you're from in the chat, although I think I might be getting a note here that the chat is not operating at the moment. So as soon as the chat gets going, it's a fun thing to get to do to get to say hi and where you're from, to see that folks call in from all over. You know, despite whatever Zoom fatigue we're all feeling right now, it's still pretty awesome that we can come together in this way from all over the world. So I'm happy you'll have a chance to hear from these phenomenal artists that we have lined up for today. So, oh good, the chat's working. Oh, look at all the folks piling in from everywhere. Cool, Stockholm, Noe Valley, Chicago, hi mom and dad, New Orleans, Reno, oh my goodness, Carmel Valley. I love this part. See, it does make you feel like, okay, Zoom does have some good things going for it, right? Like we never would have all been able to come together like this before. So some Zoom tips, I'm sure you guys are pretty used to Zoom webinars by now, but please use the chat as much as you like throughout the whole event. It's a really nice way to stay engaged and participate, cheer on the artists, etc. If you have questions, particular questions for any of today's artists, please use the Q&A box that you see at the bottom of the screen. So we'll have a Q&A section at the end of the event, and so if you put all your questions in there, we'll be able to track them. So today's program, we have 4 artists represented. Each will share a video that they've created for us, about 5 minutes each, with some background and stories about their projects. And then we'll open it up to the live Q&A. So get your questions lined up, add them into that Q&A box, and we'll go from there. So today's topic, our theme is the art of illumination. You know, it feels especially appropriate to explore light during this season, you know, at least for those of us in the northern hemisphere. The longest night of the year is coming up this Monday, the 21st, the winter solstice, and it's a time of darkness. You know, I suspect we all feel it, both literally and figuratively. In a lot of ways, this whole year has had so many elements of darkness. I started wondering the other day, you know, we have our 365-day year where the winter solstice is the darkest day. And I was wondering, like, I wonder if there's some bigger cycle than that, like over many, many, many years, you know, hundreds of years or something like that. But it could be that 2020 is like the dark point of that bigger cycle, you know, it feels like it in some ways. But you know, and sometimes my inclination with that stuff is to just immediately turn to the bright side, to see that, you know, the darkest day, well, at least that means the light is coming the next day. But I also think it's important to honor that darkness. You know, we all have our shadows, our shadow side, our shadow selves. And it does seem like the more we make friends with that and embrace our shadows, the more balanced we can all become. So, you know, most artwork comes from an artist's exploration of their inner or outer world, and many times light is a factor in that. I would say that light is an incredibly powerful material or medium to work with, and we all respond to it very deeply. So turning our sights to Black Rock City, as most of you know, if you've been to Burning Man before, which I think lots of folks have, but I know some people here haven't, it's a 24/7 city. You know, it's a very different landscape at night than it is during the daytime. And unlike our cities at home, we don't really have a system of municipal lightings. You know, there aren't like street lights that go on at night in Black Rock City. We do have lamplighters that hang lanterns here and there, but it's in a very limited area. So people have to provide their own lighting. And of course, because it's Burning Man, they get creative. Personal lighting is necessary for safety, really, you know, so you don't get run over in this big open dark area. But because of that, it means that everything actually is lit up somehow. You know, the mutant vehicles, the bicycles, the people, and of course the art. all art has safety lighting, so it doesn't get run over also, but many pieces come alive in a new way once the sun goes down. It's really one of the coolest things about Black Rock City, the way that an artwork can change so dramatically from night to day. The early years in Black Rock City were mostly about fire as a source of light. EL wire came along in the late 90s. My first year was 2000, and I remember seeing lots of fire and EL wire in those days. And then came LEDs in the early 2000s. They were, as a form, they were invented, I think, in the 60s, but it wasn't until years later that they came into common use, I think as they became more affordable and brighter and started to achieve more of a full spectrum of color, not to mention that more methods of controlling them evolved. And so form followed function. It started from a practical need to have to light things up, and then it evolved as people continued to explore and push the boundaries of what light art can be. So it's been 20 plus years of light art evolving on the playa. I could never try to name all of the light artists. I mean, you know, if you've been that everything there has its own name, but I just want to touch on a couple highlights over the years of things that have really stood out. One of the first LED pieces I knew was L2K, the lights that form the perimeter around the man in 1999 that are still going now. My own first introduction to light art was with a project called Sola in 2005, where some friends of mine did a big light art installation. We can put a link to that in the chat to see. It was my first experience working with LEDs as a medium, which is cool. And then Jen Lewin went on to build something similar with the pool. Then folks who have been around for a while remember the years of the Cubitron by Mark Lauder. I think the first one was in 2004, and that came in all kinds of shapes and designs. And it was very simple at the beginning, but totally mind-blowing. I mean, we had never seen anything like that. It was really, really stunning. More recently, we had the Tree of Tenere in 2017. That was this tree of 25,000 leaves with 175 LEDs mixed in. That was just this beautiful canvas of light. And then some other alternatives. We had the amazing moon. You remember that in 2018 by Lika Washington, called This Too Shall Pass. It was very simple and very impactful. We can put a short video link to that in the chat so you can check out what she did with that. And then lastly, I just want to mention Charlie Gatikin, who was one of the founders of Flaming Lotus Girls. So he works with fire as well as LEDs. He's done a ton of great LED work in BRC over the years, but right now he has an installation in Golden Gate Park as part of the 150th anniversary of Golden Gate Park. It just opened. If you're in the Bay Area, it's worth checking out. It's outside. It's a nice thing to be able to do while you're outside. And that's up, I think, through February. So we'll put a link to that as well. So I'll stop there because I could just keep going on, and you're really here to hear from these artists today. So as you listen to the stories from today's artists, remember that Burning Man is all about participation. There are no spectators, we like to say. So as you hear these artist stories, remember that you also can get involved. I mean, I imagine that you're into art that explores light if you're joining us today. So think about how can you take that interest and apply it personally, maybe to an exploration of your own shadows and light, or maybe expanding it out further to your community or the wider world. Maybe that looks like bringing art to Black Rock City someday, or maybe it takes another form for you, but I invite you to stay open to the possibilities. So without further ado, let's get into it. First up, I'm really excited to introduce Christopher Schardt. Christopher is an Oakland-based sculptor, musician, and computer programmer. His pieces have been exhibited at the Smithsonian, the Cincinnati Art Museum, the Oakland Museum of California, Burning Man, of course, Zero Space, and Hudson Yards. His larger pieces are places to be rather than just things to look at, making use of classical music to cement a calming, immersive environment. Many of his pieces rotate, making use of persistence of vision to create shimmering, high-resolution displays. He's been going to Burning Man since 1998, bringing art for many years. He also worked with the DPW back in the day. And I came to know Christopher when I was working in the art department, when I started working there 7 years ago. And I've been really impressed with the evolution of his work over the years I've known him. So I'm really pleased to have him here with us today. Welcome, Christopher.
Thank you very much. As the lady said, I'm Christopher Schardt. I'm in Northwest Oakland, and I've been going to Burning Man since '98. Having a good time.
Awesome. I like your background too. That's fun. Cool. Well, you've made this really beautiful video for us to watch, especially today. So let's go ahead and roll that.
Hello, my name is Christopher Schardt. I am a grumpy old burner, a longtime Burning Man artist. My first year was 1998. The first time I brought a big art piece was 2003. In 2015, I made this piece. It's called Firmament. It's 21,600 LEDs in a 52-foot star with classical music playing all around and people gathered below. It was pretty well received. It kind of started a little bit of a classical music trend at Burning Man, which I'm, very pleased about indeed. I brought it out in 2016 and 17 as well, and then decided it was time for a successor, so I made Paraluna. This piece is like Firmament in that it's got LEDs above and lots of people carpeting the ground below and classical music all around, but the LEDs, 14,000 of them, are in a spinning disc using persistence of vision to display a coherent image. And the disc is attached to the tip of a boom lift, so it can go up and down and tip around. It was also pretty dramatic. I've taken both of these pieces to a number of different festivals like Electric Daisy Carnival and Life is Beautiful. Brought Paraluna out to Burning Man again in 2019. Then in late 2019, I did a large installation at Hudson Yards in New York City called Lyra, named after a constellation with 5 stars in it that represented the lyra of Orpheus, a musical instrument whose music was so beautiful that even inanimate objects were said to be charmed. And so my lyra was 5 stars, like Firmament, except half the size. 2 of them were out on the plaza. One was under the High Line. 2 of them were inside the shopping center. I also created 3 copies of a piece called Tungsten, which is a spinning ball, 7 feet in diameter with LEDs on the surface, so it kind of looked like a light bulb. That's why I called it Tungsten, and displaying all these different images. This right here is the successor to Tungsten. I call it Filament because it actually has a filament inside that light bulb. Its operational mode will be pretty interesting, I think. Sometimes there will be LEDs displaying the image on the outside LEDs. The image will be displayed on the outside surface, and then sometimes those will fade down, and then the filament will just cast shadows through the structure of the sphere. The sphere has all kinds of interesting pieces of metal, like this and this, that will create some very interesting shadows, I think. Let's give you a little tour of my workshop. It's called Catwalk Studios. I've been here since 2003. I share it with a number of different artists. I have my machining stuff, my mill, my grinders, and the all-important horizontal bandsaw, the most important tool for a metal worker. And then I have some pieces. Here is a piece called Tangle, my very first piece, created just in time for decompression in 2014 when I first got an idea for creating an LED piece. As you can see, that even though it's a random tangle of LEDs, you can kind of see a shape going across it. In this case, it's a photograph of the Crab Nebula. Here's a couple of other pieces called Oculus, 2 different sizes of Oculus. These are obviously circular pieces where there's not a spinning element. And then here is the predecessor to Paraluna. It's called Mesmer. It's only 88 inches in diameter, but it's got the same number of strips as Paraluna, 48. And as you can see, it makes a pretty good image quality. This is kind of fun here. For those of you who like Paraluna, this is the hub. If you can imagine this up in the air, that's what holds all of the spokes. They all connect to these series of little tabs here. The spokes are in this 14-foot long box, and this monstrous piece of metal is what attaches the piece to the end of the boom lift. Here's some of the technology behind what I do. This is a Raspberry Pi with a custom board on top of it that has 16 outputs. So I plug the LED devices, whether they're strips or strings or panels, into these. You just send the signal in with the Cat6 or Cat5 cable. Actually, you can also do it with Wi-Fi sometimes. So, my future. 2020 was obviously, like for many artists, some lean times. I do have one gig though. I'm doing a private commission for someone's backyard in Brooklyn, and another immersive piece. I'm really looking forward to that. I also have a client in London who wants me to do lighting for his castle that he recently purchased in Kent. His story is kind of fun. The reason he knows about me is because he went to Burning Man in 2015 with his girlfriend, and as it happens sometimes, they broke up on the way out there, but they ended up having such a good time at the festival that they not only got back together, they got engaged. And now they have a child, and they're living in the castle, and because some of what they liked about Burning Man was firmament, they've invited me to do lighting for their world there. I also might be doing some lighting for a nightclub in London. So that's kind of my story. That's how I got here. I'm very much in appreciation to Burning Man for not only the permission and the encouragement to just go out and call myself an artist. I remember being struck by that in 1998. But also, of course, the exposure that I've gotten that has enabled me to be a professional artist. Something I never expected, but here it is. Thank you so much.
Wow, that's so great, Christopher. A castle. Let me know if you need help with that one. It's just amazing what this event has made possible in people's lives. Such a cool thing that you're now a professional artist. And it was fun to see your space and such mesmerizing work you create. Some of you folks here joining us today have seen it for yourself, but if you weren't already familiar with his work, I hope you got a little feel for how entrancing and magical it can be. So next up, shifting gears a little bit, we tend to think of light art as being all about LEDs, but you can trust our community of creatives to come up with other cool ways to play with light. So we're going to move now to another part of the world, to a very traditional art form with a modern twist. I'm excited that we have today with us here Ali Agus Ardi. He's an Indonesian-American digital multimedia artist who is now based in San Miguel de Allende in Mexico, working with a group there called La Calaca. Ali first went to Burning Man in 2010, and he's worked on many art cars and installations, including the amazing art car Axolotl, before receiving an honorarium in 2018 for his project Digital Dalang. I myself lived in Bali for a year, and I loved exploring Indonesian. You might be able to see I have this wooden dragon hanging here from my ceiling. We have these in lots of the rooms of our house that come from Bali. So when he proposed this project in 2018, I was thrilled to have a contemporary interpretation of wayang kulit, or Indonesian shadow puppetry, to get shared in Black Rock City. So it's this really gorgeous art form, as well as being a spiritual practice. And I loved how Ali interpreted it for a different generation and environment. So welcome, Ali. Om Swastiastu.
Om Swastiastu. Hi, can you hear me, see me?
Yeah, that's great.
Now you can see me. Hi, I'm Ali, creator of Digital Dalang.
Awesome. So happy to have you here. And let's take a look at the video you made for us.
Om Swastiastu. I'm Ali, the creator of Digital Dalang.
Digital Dalang is an interactive art installation. It was the first to combine motion capture technology with traditional shadow puppetry. The installation uses infrared hand sensors to project live motion graphics on top of the shadows cast by the wayang kulit puppets. Indonesian wayang kulit are one of the oldest examples of rod puppetry. The Dalang puppeteers of Indonesia use flat 2D puppets in 3D space to animate shadow plays cast on a screen. The use of projectors are nothing new in contemporary wayang performance, but I wanted to see if we could take it a step further. What if you could track the puppeteer's hands in real time to control virtual visuals in tandem with the analog shadows?
Honestly, the inspiration behind this project was that I couldn't believe it hadn't been done before. There's a lot of mysticism surrounding the Dalang puppeteers in Indonesia, so why couldn't they, with the wave of a hand, make the puppet or the shadow cast a spell? Traditional performances followed the Hindu Ramayana, a tale so long that performances could last from sunset till morning. Accompanied only by a gamelan orchestra, a single Dalang would perform these plays. The Dalang were revered as holy men, and the people attributed magic for them to be able to perform at its length. Before each act, the Dalang would have to give offering, recite mantras to go into a trance-like state, to call upon the spirits of their ancestors to help them embody these Hindu gods that they were portraying. So this was my initial inspiration for the project, trying to emulate the experience and mysticism of performing as a Dalang and the magic of wayang kulit through technology and tradition. I was born in California, but my father is half Indonesian. As a toddler in the States, I fell in love with Sesame Street and the Muppets, and as soon as I could speak, I was persistent that I was going to become a Jim Henson Muppeteer. At the age of 7, my family moved to Indonesia, and my grandmother was one of the foremost experts in ancient wayang kulit for the Indonesian Heritage Society. So obviously I fell in love with the craft at an early age, and that was really why I wanted to bring it to the Burn, was to share, this such interesting and magical culture. This is Jason, our advanced team lead, and this is Taylor, our project coordinator. And I invited them here to share their experiences working on the project and how it relates to the art of illumination.
Well, at the beginning when the project was pitched, I loved the idea of having the projector providing the shadows for the puppets that we had. But then you continued on to say that the stage itself was going to be built so that it would cast shadows onto the playa during the daytime, so that there was still some sort of an artistic value to it, even though people couldn't manipulate the puppets. But then after a certain amount of time, it was actually kind of quickly, we realized that if we positioned the stage properly, we could still play with the puppets during sunrise and sunset, because the sun would not only be hitting the stage so that it cast shadows of the built stage, but it would cast shadows on the screen itself so that people viewing behind it could still see a shadow puppet show, even though it was during the middle of the day.
Actually, that reminds me, when we first got the grant and released the designs on the burner pages, so many people fell in love with the shadow stage idea that like 4 different burner couples contacted me about doing their wedding at the stage. Actually, didn't you officiate one of those weddings?
I didn't officiate it, but I was at one. Yeah, it was about 30 or 40 people in middle of the day, and it was a beautiful ceremony. The stage was a really cool backdrop, the way the sun shone through. It was really one of the crowning experiences of my first burn.
Digital Dalang was awarded the honorary grant in 2018, and just before the burn, Harvey passed away. So in tribute, I designed a wayang kulit in his image, and we printed stickers of them, and those were our playa gifts. It wasn't until after the burn, though, that I read an article in the Jackrabbit Speaks about Larry's top 10 art installations he was most excited to see. And Digital Dalang was one of those. Unfortunately, he never got to see it. Since then, we've created a digital version of his puppet that you can see here.
So that really meant a lot. And this is for you, Larry.
Oh, I like that Larry dedication. That's sweet. And it's true. I remember in the grant meetings, we get over 700 proposals every year for grants. And, the committee reads through all of them so carefully, each one. And then I do specifically remember that being one that Larry was like, yes, we need these shadow puppets that are done in a totally modern way. And it's so cool to see what happens when you mix influences from the Muppets to, a very old cultural tradition. Like what a cool result happens there. It's just really special seeing how you've taken that kind of family tradition and adapted it into the 21st century and into Black Rock City, finding a way to make it interactive also, which is super cool. So thanks so much, Holly. And now I'm happy to welcome my friends Yelena and Serge, who are Hibikozo.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Katie. Thanks so much for having us. What 2 acts to follow. Wow, that was amazing.
Oh, well, it's great to have you. That's one of the fun things about these shows, like bringing together these groups, small groups of 3 or 4 artists all together. And, just like the range of stuff that people work on is really fun to get to see. So let me tell folks about you just a little bit, because I want to brag about all your accomplishments. That Hibikozo is a collaborative installation arts collective, and their work consists of larger than life sculptures with laser cut patterns that draw on inspirations from mathematics, science, and natural influences. Their passion stems from one core impulse: to celebrate the inherent beauty of geometric forms, patterns, and universal themes that transcend time and place. Their work has been installed all over the world, including at an arboretum just outside Chicago, near where Yelena and I both grew up. My parents were actually just there recently and sent me some beautiful pictures of your work there last week. I was first introduced to Hibikozo's work at Burning Man in 2014, when my then fiance and I were looking for an art installation to have our playa wedding. And their piece just made a perfect setting for a ceremony. I have this picture. I don't know if it will show on Zoom, but this is us there getting married in 2014 at your project. Tons of fun. And then what I loved was making friends with you afterwards, and how nice it was for you to donate more work for us to use at our legal wedding that we did afterwards. Like, really awesome. So it's been amazing getting to know them over the years, the past 6 years now it's been. And I'm just super grateful for the beauty that you bring to the world, and thrilled to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much. It means so much to be connected with you in that way. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I like your background too. Oh yeah, I've got mine back here too. I pulled out.
It was one of the originals. It might be worth a lot of money one day.
Oh, someday. Cool. Well, let's take a look at the video you guys made for us.
Hi there. We're Hibikozo, an Oakland-based art collective that focuses on large-scale public artwork. Our practice consists of larger-than-life sculptural pieces with intricate patterns that draw on inspirations from scientific and natural influences. We use lighting to accentuate the sculptural forms, cast intricate shadows, create opportunities for interactivity and dynamic movement, and impart a sense of wonder and delight. We seek to create public artwork that provides a memorable and interactive experience while serving as a welcoming and meaningful gathering place for the community. Hibikozo is made up of me, Yelena, and Serge, plus a wonderful community of people that has helped us with engineering, fabrication, and lighting. In 2014, we debuted the first 3 Hibikozo sculptures. Each was 7 feet and was lit from within by programmable point source lighting that made each sculpture look like a glowing lantern and cast crisp shadows on the surrounding environment. While we were making models for these sculptures at a 10th scale, we realized that they would actually make pretty nifty lighting pieces, so we made those a Kickstarter reward for our first project. In 2015, we created a 15-foot tall Hibikozo called Deep Thought, which presented a unique challenge to light it. Our rules for creating the artworks have always been to light the sculpture and don't let people see the light source. When people can see the bulb point source versus just the light emanating from it, we felt like it removed some of the magic. So we've always been super conscious about hiding any visible LEDs. This project also had an interactive lighting control panel set back from the sculptures where people could come up and change the colors of the artwork, the brightness, and how fast the colors changed. You could even play Pong on the controller. And for our Kickstarter backers, we gave them a gold coin which you could pop into the controller like a video game, which turned on a super bright halogen LED light that cast really wide shadows onto the playa. In 2016, we really let ourselves explore new materials like mesh and mirror and programmable LED lighting strips. The largest sculpture, the Heart of Gold, was a white mesh sculpture edge-lit with LEDs, but the center was a laser-cut gold Hibikozo on a turntable. When a person understood that they could turn it, it shut off the LED strips and turned on the internal point source light and cast shadows on the interior of the sculpture. Marvin from that year was made of mirror funnels with a laser-cut interior panel that reflected onto itself, creating an illusion of an interior three-dimensional object. The final sculpture, the Starship Bistromath, was made up of 2 layers of dichroic acrylic with an interior lit sculpture that created an infinity room effect within it. In late 2016, when Donald Trump was elected, we disavowed the color gold and painted all of our works white. So at Burning Man in 2017, we brought 4 new artworks which were called Inner Orbit. They were a single white ring with a white hanging shadow-casting Hibikozo sculpture that only cast white light onto the playa. We had decided that the best way to stand out at Burning Man was to be as minimal and simple in our lighting as possible. In 2018, we brought a piece called the Sunscope, in which the sun rose directly through the center of it during sunrise. To be honest, because we wanted this piece to be about the passage of time and immediacy, we didn't light the sculpture at all, because we wanted to get away from the mentality of always on. We wanted the experience to be ephemeral and fleeting. That year, we also had 2 of 2017's ring sculptures surrounding it, and as we were packing up those artworks on Tuesday, we decided to burn one of the pieces because that was something we had never done before. So we went to the Ashes of the Man where DPW was burning scraps, and we threw it into the fire and said a little thanks to Larry prayer. And I really feel like it was that moment and that prayer what led us to 2019, Metamorphosis, when our design was chosen for the base of the man. While we didn't work directly on the lighting, I just wanted to show what a fantastic job they did with making the cocoon glow and creating this really beautiful, otherworldly effect that I feel like really well represented our vision for the base. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the No Spectators exhibit at the Renwick Gallery of the Smithsonian in 2018. For us, it gave us 4 walls and a ceiling, 5 more canvases than what we were used to on the playa. Our goal was to envelop the room in shadows and create a truly immersive experience. While it took us 2 days to build the sculptures in the room, it took us 4 more days to perfect the lighting. And again, it was the perfect example of how much more difficult it is to do something simple. The exhibit featured the very first Hibikozo ever built, Trocto, with a pattern that is based on the theory of E8, a grand unified model for particle physics that sparked the whole Hibikozo project back in 2014. It also featured Inner Orbit Lvov, which is named after the city I was born in the Ukraine, and features a Ukrainian cross-stitching pattern, as well as a remake of our largest sculpture, Deep Thought, that was light enough for the floor of the gallery. The lighting in this room was designed to cycle between brightnesses, so people could experience the artworks in darkness, as well as that special moment at Burning Man just before the sunrise. Thanks so much for coming on this journey with us. We love you.
Wow, it's so cool to see a full catalog of everything you've brought to Black Rock City over all the years. Especially too, that was the man-based design in 2019. I mean, it's just super stunning. I used to actually be on the team that does the lighting for the man base for a bunch of years. My husband's still on that team, so it's nice to have another way that our paths have come together. You know, looking at all your work over the years, I really appreciate how your work forms this playground of geometry and light and that the environment extends, far beyond the work itself. It's interesting. There are, I think, some parallels with what Ali shared, this use of the really intricate, beautiful cutouts, using shadows to tell a story or impart an emotion or a feeling. Of course, your work has very different final forms, but it's cool to see the ways that different artists have played with these kind of universal concepts of pattern and shadow and light. So really fun to see you, and thanks for being here, you guys. Thanks. And last, but certainly not least, live from New York, we've got Leo Villareal. Such an honor to have him with us here today. Leo's light sculptures and installations have been presented at museums and civic settings in the United States and around the world. He's created many large-scale site-specific installations with renowned architects like Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, and in architecturally significant buildings like I.M. Pei's East Building of the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. Villarreal's work is part of the permanent collection of many major museums, including the Museum of Modern Art in New York and the Renwick Gallery of the Smithsonian Institution. In 2010, the San Jose Museum presented a traveling survey exhibition and monograph of his work. I have the book up here, which I love. It's very beautiful. If you have a moment to check it out sometime. Leo's also been commissioned by both federal and state agencies and civic organizations to create public works for a range of sites, everything from a New York City subway to, of course, the Bay Lights in San Francisco. Villarreal attended Yale University, where he studied installation, sculpture, and then went on to receive his master's from the Interactive Telecommunications program at NYU. And he has been to Burning Man every year since 1994, which in itself should get some kind of award. And he is one of the founders of the Camp Disorient. So he has taken light art to a new level around the world, and it's a real treat to have him here with us today. So please join me in welcoming Leo.
Thank you, Katie. That's such a nice introduction, and thank you for including me on this talk. And hello to everyone from snowy New York City. I'm so happy to share this video that talks a little bit about my experience and some of the things I've been working on.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. So yeah, let's take a look at what you made for us today.
Leo Villareal, and I started going out to Burning Man in 1994. I was working at a research lab in Palo Alto and had some friends invite me to come out. And Burning Man was a much smaller event then, much more intimate. So I bought a tent and got it all set up and went out to explore. And my first experience at Burning Man was getting profoundly lost, which was quite interesting as a 20-something-year-old to not be able to find your way home. There were none of the standard streets or markers or anything, and I found that to be absolutely fascinating. I loved being part of a community that gathered together to build a city as a gift for one another. By 1997, I decided to do something about this getting lost and created a beacon for myself. I took 16 strobe lights and a microcontroller, and I made this utilitarian device that I would use to find my way home. The combination of software, light, and space was an epiphany that got me started as a light artist. While the patterns are abstract, I'm interested in the brain's compulsion to recognize pattern and make meaning. There was an organic feeling to the light patterns, as if the piece was trying to communicate something. By 2000, our ambition had increased, and I decided to create a monumental light sculpture on top of a dome. After a tremendous amount of work, we got it up and it was spectacular and we had a great party. But it being Burning Man, the elements had their way with us and our dome got imploded in a giant windstorm. Out of this traumatic experience, our Camp Disorient was born. We created a large sign with huge letters that would help people find their way home at night. A few years later, we decided to put the DIS on our art car and drive it around. The DIS would travel around Burning Man and the Orient would stay back at camp. Although we may have led a few people astray, whenever they found the DIS, they would find an incredible party with a wonderful group of people. Our camp has grown organically over the years, and our primary interest is in helping people relearn to navigate and to feel comfortable with the unknown. Disorient is powered by love and celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. I learned tremendous lessons on the playa from my friends and campmates that I've been able to apply out in the default world. In 2003, I created my first public artwork at PS1 in Long Island City, and I was amazed to see the impact that artwork had. At the National Gallery of Art, I created a piece called Multiverse in a tunnel that links east and west buildings. We used over 40,000 white LED nodes in a 200-foot-long space to activate a hallway that remains there to this day. I was asked to think about the Bay Bridge as a canvas and spent several months making this animation of what it could look like. And I thought, well, this would probably never happen. But we started showing it to some of the people at Caltrans and thinking, well, maybe this is possible. It's one thing to do this project in Photoshop and 3D software. It's a whole other to actually go and experience the Bay Bridge itself. It's a massive structure, 1.8 miles long, 525 feet tall. And some of the painters at Caltrans took me up to see the bridge and to do a site visit. And it was a pretty extraordinary experience. I had to wear a harness and lock myself in, but I was blown away by the incredible beauty of the water and the atmosphere and all the optical things that were occurring around the bridge. For me, it's all about the inspiration of the kinetic activity and how to channel that into my sequencing. The Bay Bridge is an incredibly challenging place to work. There's no access, and every time we had to do anything, we'd have to do a lane closure. All of our work had to happen from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. so it wouldn't impact traffic. Contractors would go out, put up cones, try and not get hit by cars whizzing by, set up a basket, and go out and hang 525 feet over the water while hanging a fragile piece of electronics. I was very happy that everyone felt a sense of ownership. Everyone had participated, and like the playa, we had all worked together to create something amazing. Finally, after years of effort, I was able to then begin my work, which is sequencing the lights. I use my own custom software we've been developing for over 20 years. Light has a universal power to connect. Anyone can look at it and have a response, whether they know about art, programming, or none of it. The Bay Lights was conceived as a gift to the city, free and available to all. I love the chance encounters, overhearing people's stories, and the way that this artwork can truly create community by connecting people together. In London, I'm working on a project called the Illuminated River, which seeks to activate up to 14 bridges over the River Thames. We're working in my studio with virtual reality visualizations developed by a lot of my burner friends, in which we can see exactly what the light patterns are going to do before we ever get to London. In the summer of 2019, we launched the first of 4 bridges: London Bridge, Cannon Street, Southwark, and Millennium. Each bridge has its own style and functionality. Some are utilitarian, while others are more iconic. For me, at this polarized time, it's more important than ever to find connections, and bridges are the perfect thing. I've often described my artworks as digital campfires, and my inspiration comes from that very first piece I made at Burning Man over 20 years ago. Although the works have become more complex, the desire is still the same: to create communal experience, bring people together, and create a sense of wonder and awe. I am so grateful for the Burning Man community and the profound influence it's had on my life. I appreciate the generosity of the so many artists who have inspired me on the playa. It feels like every day the boundaries between Burning Man and the default world are being broken down. Today more than ever, the principles we've learned are profoundly useful as we seek to rebuild our lives and transform society as a whole. Thanks for inviting me to speak with you all today.
Wow, that was fantastic. You know, I've heard the story, which has like almost become a legend really, about your not being able to find your tent and how that inspired you to create your first work. And now the heights that you've gone to since then. But it's just really fun to hear it directly from you. And that footage is incredible. Like it's really neat that you are able to still have that available. So fun to see what it was like, 20 plus years ago. You've just really done such monumental work advancing this medium. And, lots of people were saying in the chat that they too have been lost or disoriented in Black Rock City. I've definitely put a variety of lights on my own tent to never turn into what yours has turned into. But, then I think about the Bay Lights and how San Francisco is now my home, and how this iconic artwork that you've installed here, really just in the short time it's been up here, it's become really like a marker for us in the Bay Area, that lets us know that we're all home. So it's fun to see how that's evolved over time. So thanks again so much. Beautiful video.
Of course, thank you.
Okay, well, wow, what a fun tour. So inspirational to hear from all of you guys. And now I want to bring everyone back on so that we have some time for our question and answer period. So if all of the artists that are here want to turn back on your cameras, and folks here, if you have a question you'd like to pose to one of the artists in particular, please use that Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And so let's go ahead and dive in. Let's see. Christopher, a question for you. Some of your earlier work incorporated fire and flame effects, but like a lot of Black Rock City, you transitioned to working with LEDs. Can you tell us just briefly how that evolution happened? Do you ever look back and feel nostalgic for the fire art?
Yes, I do feel nostalgic about the fire art sometimes, and I still have it. You can see right here. This is all parts of Charwash, which I made in 2012 and 13. I love fire art, and I certainly think I might do it again. It's just a tremendous amount of staffing that is required. You can't just go set it up and walk away like I did with Firmament. You have to have a whole crew of people. There's all kinds of safety considerations. Fuel runs out. All of the pieces that I made at Burning Man ran out of fuel by midnight, and months later, people would tell me, "Oh yeah, I went by, but it wasn't running." So I find that I liked fire art better for evening events, like crucible events, or kind of street events in San Francisco. Decompression, fantastic, wonderful, because it's just kind of a little bit more, the people are more focused on it. But don't get me wrong, I love fire art quite a bit. In fact, I'm actually looking at two ideas. One is to have a spinning LED piece that's propelled by the thrust from propane burners, because if anyone remembers my fire art, that's what it did. These were like rotating armatures that were propelled not by electric motors but by the thrust from the propane. I might do that again with LEDs. The other idea is to actually recreate some of the geometries I did with the fire art with just LEDs and electric motors. And in fact, I'm hot to trot on that right now.
Cool. Looking forward to see what that's like. Thanks. Ali, a question for you. Can you tell us what happened to digital Dalang after Black Rock City? Where did it go? Where is it now?
Well, the cool thing about digital Dalang is that since it's really just a projector and puppets, it can go anywhere. We brought the stage to Nevada City last year because they have a yearly art walk. So these are some photos from that. What is that? Not working. But it was cute. We got to that's us setting it up in the city center, and we actually had where is it? Where's one of the children? There, we were teaching the children how to make puppets, so that was super fun.
That's great.
But like directly after Burning Man, we went to Wonder Fruit Festival in Thailand. My brother runs a stage there called Rainforest Pavilion, and so that stage, all of the proceeds goes towards saving the rainforest. So Digital Dalang typically has always tried to align with different charities. We aligned with Rainforest Pavilion when we were at Burning Man and donated to them a few times. We also did this fundraiser in Jakarta, in my hometown, for this charity called Jendela Dunia, which is an orphanage that provides school supplies for impoverished children there. So this was one of, and that DJ right there, he's the guy who played the music in my video. So yeah, we've been traveling around, and just before COVID too, we actually were in talks with creating a permanent installation at this eco park in Indonesia. But so we'll see how that turns out.
Cool. It's fun to see things go on to have other lives after there. It's especially yours going all around the world. That's really neat. Thanks. Yelena and Serge, a question for you. Someone has said, working with LED lights requires a number of distinct skill sets, including construction, design, and programming. Did you learn all of these skills, or did you collaborate with others to learn or create?
Hi. Our artwork doesn't, compared to Leo's or Christopher's, does not include a lot of programming. We try to keep our life very, very simple, and to accentuate the artwork itself. But it just took us a while of learning on our own, experimenting. I think the first time we did artwork, what we thought would work, we set up before Burning Man, and we realized it absolutely wouldn't. And so we iterated, and I feel a lot of the design of our work is actually proving what wasn't working, and sort of exploring that, and not just not giving up and just settling on the sort of the first solution. So it's been a growth of learning. We've collaborated with other artists in our community who's given us tips on how to do some sort of more advanced programming, and sort of intelligence to our lighting. But for the most part, I think it's been just an explorative process.
Cool. Yeah, I could see that. And I mean, Burning Man's a great way to make that happen, right? It's like prime for exploration and experimentation, and you can try something and it's okay if it doesn't work, and you can try again, and that's great. And so Leo, maybe I would pose that same question to you. How did you come about learning all the skills that it takes to do everything that you do?
For me, it was a long process of, school and then technology and working at a research lab and eventually finding my materials, which is what happened at Burning Man in '97. And, it's really just staying connected to a community, and learning a lot from the people who do a lot of physical computing at the Interactive Telecommunications program at NYU, which is all about breaking things open, figure out how they work, very much of a maker ethos, and a lot of really generous burners, other artists who, that's the thing I love about Burning Man is it's kind of this amazing research lab. And you have all these mad scientists there who are really incredibly generous and willing to share all this information, which is something very beautiful about our community. And I think that's something we need to do in the world at large. All these skills that we've learned, we need to transfer this knowledge to others. And I think it's kind of the golden age of being able to work with LEDs, because initially the materials were quite expensive, but now the cost has come down so much. And it's really accessible. And a lot of people in the chat are asking, well, how do I get started with this? And it's really straightforward. I mean, go to, Adafruit or one of these places, and it's easy to get microcontrollers and LEDs and start working with it. And there's amazing communities of makers everywhere who are willing to help and have put their schematics and programs and everything online. So it's really just this incredible time for sharing knowledge and, and inspiring one another. So I think that's one of the beautiful things that's happening now.
Yeah, I love that. That was going to be my next question of how can people get started. So yeah, thank you for sharing what that's like. Someone else is saying, Leah, what kind of LEDs do you use in that awesome thingy behind you?
This is a piece called Big Bang, and it uses LEDs made by Philips, 1,600 of them. And it was, for me, I was making these regular patterns of spokes and things, but I decided what would happen if I decided to do a randomized pattern. So we created a little program called Distribute that lets you kind of push around clusters. So getting kind of non-linear was one of the exciting parts of it, but also quite challenging when you're trying to replicate the piece. And, because you have a string of LEDs and you're trying to put it in, and what order did we put it in? And so it presents some interesting challenges, but exciting to be able to kind of make your own patterns and really get into the code and the tools, which is something that I love. And I love working with programmers and developing these things that allow us to do this work. So it's, but it depends. I also make my own custom LEDs and boards and do all this stuff depending on the project. So you kind of have to pick your battles. And, when you're dealing with work that has to go outdoors, you go to a museum and all those kinds of things, you kind of want things that are going to work. But there are other amazing places to experiment, like Burning Man, where you can try things out, and the temporary nature of it allows for a lot of exploration. And that's something I do with the camp. It's a collaborative effort that we all work together, and it's less about my work and all just doing it as a group, which is really refreshing for me.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, it's refreshing for us too, to be on the, the participating end of what you create. Thank you. Let's see, a question for Ali. What type of projector did you use, and how did you protect it from the playa dust?
That's actually a funny story. So we used a 5,000 lumen digital Sony projector, I believe, and we were so behind schedule that we started building this projector box, but didn't get built. So I tried to finish it on Playa, and it was janky. It kind of worked, but for the most part, we just ended up like covering the computer and the projector with a sarum. But on Wednesday night of the burn was supposed to be our opening ceremony at the project, and it was a huge dust storm. So we couldn't bring out the computer or the projector, and ended up having to just use par lights to do the shadow puppets traditionally, just with lights. So that was kind of cool. It was kind of like the Hindu gods tell us, no, you gotta like go back to the traditional too and show that, and like, you know, respect the traditional arts of where it came from, you know. So that was fun. But yeah, projectors on Playa are hard, as are computers.
True. I also wanted to circle back around to you, Christopher, in terms of the question of how do folks get started in the realm of working with light?
Yeah, I'd like to actually expand that whole concept. It's not just light, but anything. How did I learn to do fire art? By doing it, right? You try to do something, you run into a log jam, you say, I don't know how to do this, and you have people you can call, and you know, and then that's how you learn. And I would recommend that anybody simply use the artist networks in their area, and get started that way. Specifically for LED art, there's a Facebook group that I don't run it. I have nothing to do with it except I'm part of it, called LEDs Are Awesome. It's a very nice, it's a very open to experts, and it's also open to complete newbies. And there's lots of people who love to answer newbie questions, so you can ask them there. I am a computer programmer, and I've written all my software, including an iPad app called LED Lab. But I actually kind of disagree with Leo a little bit in that I can't imagine most non-programmer artists handling like writing the code. And it used to be that you had to kind of get an Arduino and then learn to code. And I just was like, that is just going to be really hard. And I think it's going to be a bit of a logjam for most people, non-programmer people. So I would recommend going with software that's already written, and that's gotten to be pretty mature. There's a number of applications out there that run on, you know, Windows and Macintoshes. I have an application that runs on iPads called LED Lab that's, I think, pretty easy. You know, people tell me it's pretty easy to get started with, and you know, just you learn it by doing it, and then you know, and then you hopefully find people you can ask questions of. If you're in New York or San Francisco, both of those cities have an organization called Dorkbot, DORKBOT, that have monthly meetings. They also have an email list that you can ask questions of. You know, there's, you know, poke around the fringes of Burning Man and you will find all kinds of resources.
That's super helpful. Thank you. Yeah. I see we're coming close on our time here, and I just had one more question. And this is a question that I had for Leo. That's actually my own question, which I hope is okay to interject my own. But when I look at your work over time and in different settings, you know, I see these patterns of light, and of course there are different architectural base structures, but there's some universality in the way that the light plays and dances in the space. You know, the movement and the ripples. Can you tell us a little bit more about your inspiration for those patterns and sequences?
Sure. I think it all comes back to things we see in nature and trying to understand the mechanisms of the underlying structures of, you know, how does water move, and, you know, why do we respond to sunsets in the way that we do, and these really primal things that we respond to in nature, and kind of channeling that. So I love fire and these elemental things, and a lot of the pieces I do are trying to channel those things and to kind of elicit those similar responses. And it's interesting to me how with just LEDs and software, kind of these cold hard materials, you can create these very human moments that really bind people together in a powerful way. And that comes back to this idea of these digital campfires and the way that people gather around together. And when some people are looking at the Bay Lights, I can't help but talk to the person next to them because they're having this experience, and it's sort of, you just kind of want to be together. So that's important to me, that these things are physical objects in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I hear your phone ringing too, so I see how you paused there. But yeah, I mean, something really lovely about the Bay Lights, the way it is over the water, and there's this movement of water, or same with the work with the bridges, like some of that, the kind of ripple effect is duplicated in the lights in a beautiful way.
Well, they're the unintended effects of the reflections, and some nights it's foggy. And I'm really interested in abstraction and not dealing with images or text, and really just having this, open-endedness for viewers. So you can look at it and, everyone comes to their own subjective conclusion, and you're not seeing one thing. So that maintains a sense of mystery. And you can look at it for a long period of time and see different things in it. But the chance encounters of all these other things that are happening, I think, are amazing. And I really welcome that. And, it's another instrument in the kind of orchestra that we're creating.
Yeah, that's neat. It's like it's the relationship between the work and the natural world and how they interact with each other. And that's what makes it really cool. Like every time I drive over the Bay Bridge, I'm like, yeah, every time I have this magical kind of entranced feeling of like, oh, it's so beautiful. And, it's been 7 or 8 years or something like that. It doesn't get old because it changes in such a way. And yet there's a kind of elegant persistence in a way it's familiar, but it's also different each time. It's really lovely. Yeah. Well, I wish we had all day to talk with all of you guys, but we are just past time here. So I'm going to have to wrap up for today. But in closing, I just really want to say thank you so much first of all, to today's artists. You guys have gone above and beyond in the work that you create. You've taken this love of light and brought that to life, turned it into some really beautiful and inspiring work. So just really well done. Big kudos to you. Thanks so much for sharing your stories today. I also want to thank the ArtSpeaks production team here at Burning Man, who make this such a smooth experience for everybody. And then to all of you calling in today, a huge sincere thank you for all you do to support the artists and for whatever ways you are finding to befriend your shadow side or play with light to create beauty in the darkness. So we are curious to get your feedback about ArtSpeaks. We've got a really short survey that we'll drop in the chat here. We'll send it by email in a couple days. We really want to make this show the best it can be, and would love to hear your thoughts on that. And some upcoming fun events. The next ArtSpeaks is going to be on Wednesday, January 20th. Yes, that's Inauguration Day. It'll be a fun day at 5 p.m. Pacific. And all the inauguration stuff will be done by the time we get started. And the theme for that one is Art Ablaze. So we're going to hear from artists who build their art to burn it, who choose to release their art with fire. And we'll have a special guest co-host with me, Dave X, who manages the fire art safety team. So that should be a lot of fun. You can register for that on Kindling. And then this coming Friday, we have, I don't know if you know, we have a podcast Burning Man does. It's called Burning Man Live. And this Friday, we're doing a holiday special. It's at noon Pacific, and the theme is SantaCon from home. So the Burning Man Live podcast team will be hosting this very special non-denominational holiday show, recording their final show of 2020 in front of a live online audience. So they've got some really fun guests lined up. The person who originated SantaCon, the founder of Burning Man's first ever theme camp, which was Christmas Camp, and Reverend Billy of the Church of Stop Shopping. So there'll be special musical guests. It's going to be a whole really awesome, fun extravaganza this Friday at noon. The link for that is in the chat. And then lastly, if you are feeling the warm vibes of light and brightness and the holiday season, please consider adding Burning Man Project to your holiday gifting list. Your donation will get us that much closer to creating Black Rock City together and will allow us to continue our important year-round work of supporting artists like the ones we heard from today. I want to invite you to look at the positive impact that Burning Man has had on today's guest artists. All of these artists told us how in some way or another they got their start in Black Rock City, and many of them have gone on to become professional artists, sharing their talents with the whole rest of the world. So it's just so amazing what this gathering in the desert can inspire in people's lives. And now multiply that by 400 plus artists every year, and the impact is just really great, very meaningful, and we need your help to keep it going. Our Season of Gratitude campaign just kicked off this week to meet our 2020 fundraising goals. So please head over to burningman.org. Actually, on our homepage right now, we just kicked off this really fun thank you experience. So I recommend checking that out. And if you feel moved to donate, you can reach us at donate.burningman.org. So a huge thank you to all of you for joining. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Happy solstice, happy holidays. Wishing you a happy and healthy, especially healthy 2021. And look forward to seeing you at the January episode. So thanks so much, everyone.